Sam, thank you so much for joining us today. What a joy it is to talk to you because you are covering topics that I've been fretting about for such a long time now. And I saw families of all kinds all around the world are shifting from a one mum show to a proactive whole family team. How are you doing this?
Oh my gosh, thank you so much for having me. Thrilled to be here. So, what we're doing is instead of normalizing motherhood burnout, instead of normalizing everything falls on mom's shoulders, the physical tasks, the mental load, everything. Like you said, we're switching from the one man mom band to a whole family team, and we're doing this by teaching kids how to be proactive contributors, showing them how to what I call notice and do without waiting to be asked at home.
I love it because I've been doing this a bit myself because I do
Hmm.
feel quite feminist about this, but
Hmm.
not as well as you. So I have been talking a while about, look, we're in a team. I've done this for the team. What are you doing? You go just, it's genius what you're doing. So can you explain this notice and do concept that you've come up with?
Yes, so it's kind of from a bird's eye view. There's three different aspects to it. It's very, very simple and it works for all ages. So the first part is we are going to teach our kids what I call the big three. If we want them to be contributors in the home, we have to give them the skills and show them how to contribute. What are cleaning skills, for example? This is the thing that's most similar to like the traditional chore chart. So it gives kids a sense of familiarity and safety of like, oh, okay, I know what this is. I've done this before instead of just like ripping the rug totally out from underneath them and doing something completely new overnight. So my kids' big three is every day they wake up and make their bed. Every day they check to see if the dishwasher needs to be unloaded, and then they take a section of the dishwasher and unload it. And then they now manage the entirety of their laundry cycle all on their own, but we didn't start that way. I think that can seem very, very overwhelming. We started with, for example, an easy way would be like taking all of your laundry in your room, your dirty laundry, putting it in the laundry basket, and then anything that's clean on your floor, folding and putting away. The big three can be anything you want it to be. You could even start with two. It doesn't really matter. Just think of daily tasks that you want your kids to be responsible for and have ownership over. The second part is the notice and do. So this is teaching kids how to notice. Just because we as women and moms are like pro noticers, because this is the job that we've had to do forever, doesn't mean that our kids are naturally going to know how to do it. So we teach our kids how to notice what needs to be done in the home. We walk them through the rooms. We give them examples. We make what has been previously invisible visible by narrating our own thought process. It's going to sound a little bit unhinged to you at first, but again, it's kind of pulling back the curtain in your own brain so they can understand what goes into noticing and how to notice. The third part of it is what I call cycle breaking conversations. And this is talking to kids in simple, understandable, age appropriate ways about these feminist concepts, about societal gender expectations in the home, what burnout means, what inequity means, and why. It's the deeper why behind all of this, why we're doing this, because we're not doing this just because mom said so. We're not doing it to make
Mm.
mom happy. We're doing it because these are important life skills and because we're breaking the cycle of inequity. So then when they go on into the house, into their adult relationships, whether it's a roommate or a marriage or any kind of partnership, or even just in their solo life, they're going to have these executive functioning skills to be able to be aware, proactive, contributing partners and adults.
God, there's so much to unpick there. I love no, I love that because I think that our kids, particularly our teenagers, because a lot of my parents
Mm,
are have got teens or tweens, they're very focused on inequity, but they're looking outside and they're not really thinking about what's happening in the home. So actually bringing that into the home and saying, is it fair? Well, you could take it outside the home and say, would it be fair on a team if, one person got to had to do everything and everybody else got to enjoy the
yeah,
spoils? And
yeah.
and then if you take that and then bring it back into the home, exactly what you're talking about, it's something that really, once they open their eyes to it, it can start to make them more understanding of why things have to be different. You mentioned
Absolutely.
executive skills, and I love that because I recently did an episode talking about executive skills because often people think their kids are lazy. Oh, you know, oh, they just, and then I found this book that was talking about all the different executive skills. And I said, well, maybe they just don't have some of these
Yeah.
executive skills yet. So how
Yeah.
do you see this feeding into the building of executive skills?
Yeah. I mean, that's a great point. And with teens, especially, I think that's one of the hardest narratives that we as parents have to move past. We have to be willing to let go of this narrative that they, quote unquote, should be doing more. They
Mm,
should know how to do this.
mm,
They're being lazy. They don't care. That's another thing I hear a lot. My teen could care less about, emptying the dishwasher or what their room looks like or whatever it is. And so with parents of teens, especially, I always encourage them to assume the best. Like, it's
yes.
not like whether or not they should or shouldn't be doing something at a certain point is almost like a moot point. Like, it doesn't matter. Our role as parents is to teach them.
Yeah.
And we get to teach them these executive functioning skills because the research shows that executive functioning skills is the most important skill set to have as far as predictor for future success. The
Wow.
most important skill set to have. So as a parent, I get to put down my own baggage around this because I think that's really, really important too. As women, especially, who are often the default parent, we're the ones that have been carrying all this for everyone. It can be hard to teach a child something because we have so much hurt around it. We have
Mm,
so much pain around the fact that we have been in this unfair position of carrying and shouldering everything for everyone in the home 24/7, always. And
mm,
at the same time, that's not our kids' job to deal with.
mm.
So we want to make this an emotionally neutral skill as much as possible so we can teach them in the same way that we taught them to ride a bike or tie their shoes or to read. This is an emotionally neutral skill, even though it doesn't feel that way sometimes to us because of the unfairness in the past. That's valid. That's real. We can recognize that and not dump it onto our kids as we're teaching it to them, right?
Mm.
So there's a lot to it, but essentially with teens of parents, I break it down in a really, really simple way. We want to assume the best so we can teach them. We want to talk to them and collaborate with them. It's really fun in a way to do this with teens because you get to say, hey, this is how we want the family to function now for these reasons. Tell me what you think about this. What do you feel like is reasonable for you? Let's work together on it so we can just get on the bike and start riding the bike. It's okay if they can't lift like 20-pound weights, quote unquote, right outside the gate. That's okay. If they need to start with the 1-pound weights,
Mm.
that's fine. Let them. Let's just get on the bike and start making progress and moving forward.
Yes. And you're on record as saying you're not that keen on chore charts.
Yes.
Can you talk us through
Yeah.
why they're an issue?
Yeah. So chore charts are like good, not great.
Right.
And the reason why is because at the end of the day, chore charts skip the first and most important part of task execution, which is the noticing, and it
Mm.
defaults all of that invisible labor
Back to
onto
us.
back to the person who's making the chore chart.
Mm.
And I had this light bulb moment. Actually, it was like a year and a half ago. I had been on this journey with my husband about confronting the then inequity in our relationship. We had been working on it at that point for a solid year straight, really intentionally. And it was
Wow.
hard and long. We're still very
Wow.
much in it, but it is so much better than it was before. And then it was a Friday night. I'm making a Saturday morning to-do list for my kids, like a chore chart. And I just had this like lightning moment where I was like, what am I doing? And I like dropped the magic, like the red magic marker to the ground. And I realized I've spent the last year of my life teaching my husband how to be a proactive contributor, how to notice what needs to be done in the home on his own without needing me to point it out, without needing me to make him a list or just assuming I'll do it. Why am I teaching my kids to rely on me
Mm-hmm.
to notice what needs to be done? Why? And at that moment, I was like, we're not doing this anymore. We're not perpetuating this narrative. We're breaking this cycle right now. And the next morning, I told my kids, we're not doing the chore chart anymore. I'm not going to make lists for you guys. Here's what we're going to do. And that's when Notice and Do was born. And so it takes that emotional labor that mental load off of the woman's shoulder, and it shares it with the whole family in age appropriate ways. So they're building executive functioning skills, they're building resilience, and they're building an awareness of what it takes to run a home, which brings empathy and compassion and understanding.
All those other things that we talk about on the podcast that we're trying to, we're thinking, oh, how do I make my child more empathetic? Well, here we are. Here's one of the really good things we can do. And I love what you were saying about the mental load, because I think, I mean, I've done an episode on mum guilt, because a mum contacted me and said, you know, can you talk more about this? I feel so guilty. I feel so stressed. And I do think the mental load is one of the heaviest burdens of all of this. It's not even just doing the things, it's having to remember to take care of those things. And this wonderful idea that you had, this wonderful program and framework, is takes so much of that pressure away from that expectation.
Yes. And go ahead. I'm sorry, go ahead.
And you mentioned noticing and getting, so for example, one of the things that you talk about is room tidying. Massive. Everyone's going, wait, well, what are we talking about here? Because this is my biggest bugbear. Everyone's so irritated by the unbelievably messy rooms. And you talk about decluttering the rooms and how they can use these techniques to do this. So please help us.
Yes. Okay. So room cleaning, or what I call a reset, that is a separate thing from the decluttering. I think you're referring to a post that I did last week about decluttering. We did it in the new year. We do that probably like once every 6 months, and there's a process to that. So it's not like an ongoing regular thing. But once you teach your kids these noticing skills, it makes things like decluttering a whole lot easier. As far as the room itself, on just like a daily lived basis, I actually let them have control over whether or not they want their room to be clean or not, with a few exceptions. One, like I said, one of their big three is to make their bed. So that's a daily expectation that they do. The second one that they do is dishes, and then the laundry. So if they have laundry on their floor in their room, that's one of their daily responsibilities, is that they manage that. They pick it up, put it, away in the drawer or in the laundry basket. Past those two things specific to their room, I don't micromanage it for them. It's their space. Yeah. They get to have the opportunity to decide for themselves how they want to live within their space. But the cool thing is once you give them these skills and they start practicing, and their muscles, so to speak, start to grow a little bit bigger, and they understand how to reset a space. They understand how to notice, and they understand how much better it feels to have an organized space that's functional. It's not uncommon for my kids to choose of their own volition to clean their room as their daily notice and do. Like the other day, they come and they tell me what they do after they've done it. And they're like, hey, Mom, I did my big three. I did my notice and do. I'm like, okay, tell me what you did for your notice and do. Oh, my desk in my room was getting like really gross and intense. So I just cleared it all off and I organized it. It's all reset now. Awesome. I didn't have to ask them to do it. I didn't have to beg them to do it. I didn't have to follow up and remind them. They just decided to do it on their own, which is really empowering for them. Sure. So it's a total win-win. And once we give them the skills and the ability to do it, then they can actually do it and choose to do it on their own.
And I love you talking about resetting rooms, because I've started, I think some of the things you've said have just sort of seeped in, because, with my new year, I thought what I'm going to do is every time we leave a room that we've just used, I'm going to make everyone turn around and say, we need to reset the room. Let's reset this room the way it was when we first came in.
Yep.
And it has made a difference, because people used to just get up and walk out and I go, because they would have trashed it or... Yeah.
Right. Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's so easy. And it shows them how easy and how these things actually don't take as long as we think they're going to.
Yes.
Like in our head, it's especially for kids. And that's, I think, where like defiance can come into play. But again, assuming the best, they're not being defiant. They're just overwhelmed because they are still learning these executive functioning skills. Okay, that's normal. They're kids. We're going to team up with them and show them how doable and easy it actually can be by just being like, what can we notice? What's like in the dining room, you said, like, is there anything on the floor that we can quickly throw away? What's on the table? Let's like scan the whole table and see what needs to go where really, really quickly. Let's just pound it out, reset it, and then we move on.
Yeah. Yeah. And one of the things that's helped me is this kind of, if it will take 5 minutes, do it now. And actually what I've realized is lots and lots of things that only take 5 minutes. And so you actually do a lot more of those little just get on with them jobs. And I'm encouraging my kids to think about that. Like, is this really going to take that long? Let's do that.
Yeah.
And what about neurodivergent kids? Because I have found I've got different kids. I've got four different, I've got two bonus daughters and I've got two other daughters. And one thing I noticed that was a real eye opener for me recently was that the neurodivergent children don't pick things up from other people. They don't notice. So where a lot of us will see the way other people do things and you go, oh yeah, that's how it's done. And then they do it. The neurodivergent child, and again, they vary, will not learn that. And so, for example, things have to be really explicitly explained.
Yeah.
So what you've got different children. I think you might have a neurodivergent.
Yeah, we are a neurodivergent family.
Right. So how are you dealing differently with the different kids? I mean, do you say to all of them, what do you notice? And then one of them just doesn't notice anything, or are you finding they're all just as equally able to notice things?
Abilities vary, but my expectation for them is pretty similar across the board. I think one of the, I feel like in social media sometimes I will see a narrative that goes something like, we have to lower the bar for neurodivergent kids because they're just not capable. And I don't believe that. I think neurodivergent kids are very, very capable. We just need to be able to teach them in a way that works for their brain instead of trying to shove them into a box they were never made to fit into. So does my neurodivergent kid sometimes need more reminders? Yes. But I have found that when I know how to work with her brain, she is actually one of my most on it, capable, proactive kids.
Wow.
So again, like when I talked about like you're going to sound a little bit unhinged at the beginning, we can't just say, and like even to any child who hasn't done this before, this is a teachable skill, so we have to teach it. We can't just say, okay, notice things, and when they don't, we get really, really mad and upset because again, that's our emotional stuff coming into play. That's our own baggage. We have to break it down for them in the same way that we taught them to tie their shoes. And their fingers fumbled, and they had to practice again and again and again. We weren't like, oh, why am I going to learn to tie your shoes? I have to do everything around here. I'm always going to have to like tie your shoes for you. And I'm so sick of being the shoe tire. Like, no, we understand that it's a process and they are learning. And I think that's what the magic of this is and why it works for not just neurotypical kids, not just for little kids, but for younger kids and older kids, for teenagers, even adults living at home, and for neurospicy kids. For strong-willed kids, we have one of those as well, is because it is simple, it is flexible, and it's realistic. Like, it can be the most game-changing strategy in the world, but if it's not realistic for me as a parent who is busy managing all these different things to implement and teach, and it's not realistic for my kids to actually do, it's not going to happen. But we have all those things in play, and that's where the magic is.
Yeah, I mean, I had my daughters over Christmas. I noticed we were staying somewhere and they had a joint bathroom with two basins, and I walked in there and went because it was utterly trashed. And I called them in and I said, I feel like I really haven't explained very well to you how to manage this space and what, so I'm going to explain to you how this works and how to clean things as you go along. But also you ask me if I'm not explaining it properly, can you tell me?
Love that.
Because it's a two-way street, isn't it? And sometimes we think we've explained something, but maybe we haven't.
Yeah.
Or maybe they just kind of zoned out or...
Sure. Maybe they just need more practice too. I love that, like, ownership and responsibility of like, hey, I haven't taught you how to do this. That's all right. I'm going to teach you right now. Yeah. And then understanding that it's not like they're still going to need to practice. And it's still probably going to be a little bit messy every now and then, but like we're taking baby steps. Yes. And that's where the progress happens.
And coming back to the way that we feel as parents, I love some of the points you've been making, because what you're making very clear is that there is a whole self-care side of this, and we kind of need to do that first, do we? I mean, how do you talk to yourself about this to kind of calm yourself? Because you recognize something very important there.
Yeah, absolutely. I validate my experience for myself, that it hasn't been fair, that the fact that I've had to carry all of this for everyone sucks. And it's not my fault. It's not a failing on my part. It's a failing of our society that normalizes this, that has these wildly unrealistic expectations for mothers. And I remind myself that I'm taking this awful situation that I've been handed. I didn't ask for, I didn't want, but here we are. And I'm choosing to spin it into gold for myself and for my kids. So we're going past just self-care and creating an opportunity for us to have supportive care.
Yeah, yeah. And I guess one of the things that struck me when I was thinking about the techniques you're talking about is I've managed staff in workplaces, and really what you want is someone who will notice what needs to be done, who doesn't constantly come up to you and say, what do I need to do next?
Yeah.
Or who won't do things because they haven't been explicitly instructed. So in a way, it's not just about being effective at home. You're actually turning your child into somebody who can be really effective when they go into the workplace.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, this is like leadership training 101, entrepreneurship training 101, like these skills that they are going to take from this. The ripple effects are huge. This is how we create future adults who can see a need, see a gap, see an opportunity, and then fill it on their own, take initiative without waiting for someone to hand them a to-do list and to say, here, this is what needs to happen. They can anticipate needs. They can be proactive out in their community, at school. Like, my favorite thing in the world is when I get DMs from moms who say, you know what, I love that for example, the other day, it was like, I love that my son is doing these things at home. That's amazing. But my favorite thing is when I got like an email from my teacher recently and said, I just have to let you know that he stayed after recess and on his own, without needing to be asked or told or even suggested, he cleaned up all of the sports equipment that everyone had been using on his own and organized it because he saw that it needed to happen and he made it happen. I had another email or DM from a mom and said, my daughter was in her junior high art class, and the teacher kind of called the class together and said, listen, this art room is always a mess. It's really awful trying to get everyone to participate and help clean up. We need to do something different. What can we do? Which, like, props on the teacher on having like a kind of a community circle about that. That's amazing. So what she did was the teacher had every student go around and offer a suggestion. This woman's daughter talked about notice and do and the concept and how to do it. The whole class voted, and the whole class voted for notice and do. And the teacher emailed this woman a couple weeks later and said, I just have to tell you that our classroom has never been cleaner and it has never been easier. The kids are taking ownership. They're being proactive. They have the freedom to choose what and how they want notice instead of like being told and given assignments. And they're thriving. Yes. And that's what's amazing, is that the ripple effect is really, really huge.
And it's not about them having to jump through a hoop and get your clap and your praise, which is not actually what we're trying to achieve. We don't want kids who grow up thinking, I've got to just do all the right things and then I'll get the pat on the back. We actually want them to be self-starters about this, which is just amazing.
Yes.
And one of the things you mentioned was going shopping with the kids. And not having to give them a list. So talk to me about that, because that's another interesting area.
Yes, and not to say that shopping lists are bad. I can do a lot of things. Grocery shopping, meal planning, making dinner, like those, it's really, really hard for me, and it takes a lot of effort. So sometimes, and I think
no one warned you before.
It's the worst. There's like 500 chores involved in meal planning and grocery shopping.
Yeah.
So sometimes, and I think this is a really universal experience, when you're just going to the store and it's kind of like, oh, it's just on the way home. We need to grab some essentials. We don't have a list. It's not like a whole involved thing. We're just going and grabbing a few things. Usually in the past, as a mom, I'm the one that has that running mental list in my head of like, we're running low on milk. We need some more orange juice. Kids need more cereal. We need eggs, whatever it is. But now we go into the store if we're having one of those moments, and I'll say, okay, guys, I need you. We call it notice and grab. We're going to start in the produce section. You guys know what the kind of usual stuff we get that we kind of always just have on hand. I'm not going to spell it out for you. I know that you know. I trust you. Notice and grab.
It doesn't come back with lots of chocolate and crisps.
Yes. Well, and the thing is the first time I did this I was like, what's going to happen here? Are they going to exactly. Are they going to fill it up with cookies and ice cream and candy bars? And there was only like 2 things that I had to veto. And sometimes I'm like, yeah, you could throw that in the basket. It's fine. But they took that responsibility.
Wow.
And they ran with it because it feels good to them.
Yeah.
And they did the produce section. And then we went on to other sections, and they were just like running through the grocery store because it felt free and fun. And actually, I'm just remembering this too. They were in like the cereal aisle or something, and a woman noticed what they were doing, and it was the 3 of them together deciding what cereals to get. And she was like, are you guys like, what's going on here? Are you just like grocery shopping? And they're like, oh yeah, our mom's just on the next aisle over. We're just grabbing things that we need. And she was like dumbfounded. She was like, wow, that's really amazing that you can do that. But then I have like 5 things on my list that I have to get, you know. Yes. And sometimes we do it as a whole family, and my husband and I, like, we will have a list, and we'll divide up the list into sections. Each kid takes a section. We all decide a meeting point to come back afterwards, and our list just went from like 30 items to 5 items.
Amazing.
And then it feels like we're on a date. We're just walking around the grocery store, grabbing a couple things, you know? And it's fun too, because the kids then start feeling like, the first time we did it especially, they were like bagging the groceries themselves, putting it into the car, loading it, unloading it, getting a wagon to make it easier to unload the groceries, because it was like those dopamine hits of like the I did it feeling kept coming and coming and coming and building on itself. And it's really empowering. Like, they love when we go to the grocery store as a family now.
That's amazing. How exciting. And also, you know, teenagers, or I think David Yeager, when he wrote his book 10 to 25, one of the things that came through loud and clear was that they're looking for status and respect. Yeah. And this gives them both.
Yes.
You know,
yes. They want to be treated like adults. Yeah. They want that freedom. They want that ownership. They want to do it their way and to choose how to do it. And this gives them the opportunity to do all of that.
Sam, how did you end up with this? Because you said you went through, you know, working with your husband on it. But I mean, what preamble to that? Why do you think you've been the person who's gone, right, this is enough? Because we've had a lot of feminists in the past. Sure.
I mean, it's like, why does anybody do anything? I think it was just like, I just decided, like, you know, that story I told where it was like, I'm doing for my kids what I'm trying to unlearn between my husband and myself. Why am I continuing to perpetuate this whole thing when my kids are capable? They can notice things for themselves. I've always, I don't know, I guess I've always been good at teaching kids how to do things in very, very simple ways. And so that naturally lended itself to me. And notice and do just popped into my head because that's what made sense. Like, we're noticing and we're doing. We're not just doing because we were assigned a task or mom told us to or whatever. And then when I shared about it on social media, in my first post about it was, I'm teaching my kids about the invisible labor of managing a home. Here's how. And it just went like crazy, crazy wildfire. And I think the reason is because there's been a lot of, recently especially, talk around the mental load as it pertains to women's lives, inequity in the home, and partnerships, and how to address things with adults, with our husband, with our partner, whatever it is. Nobody has been talking about the kid thing. Like, what about kids in all of this? Because at the end of the day, like, yes, like, having an adult partner as an equitable partner is so important and huge and a big piece of this. But it's not just mom and dad managing everything. It's a whole family team, kids included. I always say that mental load is a whole family problem. Whole family problems require whole family solutions, and kids are part of the family. And then we are empowering them to not only break the cycle, but to be really impactful, successful, functional adults. Like I have people in my DMs all the time saying, if I had just been taught this as a child,
yes,
I would not
exactly.
be drowning. I would not be drowning in my life, because it's so much harder to teach yourself, unlearn bad habits, retrain your brain as an adult. It's so much harder. So teach our kids now and set themselves up for success. So all of these little things don't become big things because they haven't been taught the skills to manage.
I want to, I'm going to end on that, but I just want to stress that because I remember looking around the room thinking, I want to tidy up, and then thinking, I don't know how that happens. How do you do that?
And where do I start? What do I do?
Where do I start?
This is overwhelming.
I've spent my whole adult life trying to figure this stuff out.
Yeah.
And what a waste of life, when I could have learnt these skills when I was younger, and it would have been so much easier. And then I could have just handed them down to other people. So I love what you're doing, Sam. It's amazing. It's really empowering. It's a wonderful message. Where can people find you?
Thank you so much. I am on Instagram at samkelly_world. I have a link in my bio. There's a free guide if they want to access that. It walks through, like we talked about in the beginning, the three main things, and really breaks down the concepts of the big three, how to start teaching your kids that, and how to teach your kids how to notice and do. So grab that free guide. I also have an audio course that I open up quarterly, so that will be opening up for an enrollment next month. And if they want to hop on the wait list, that's where they're going to get first access as well as an exclusive discount if that's something of interest to you. But then also in my Instagram feed, I just have tons of really practical, simple, quick win tips like the decluttering that we talked about. That's all free content. And you could just go off of my free content alone and see pretty massive shifts in your family.
Amazing. And also you have a book coming out.
Yes.
Congratulations.
So thank you. Hopefully signing the contract within the next few weeks. And that's obviously a long process. It won't be out for another 2 years. But it's happening. So
we'll be watching. We'll be buying.
Thank you.
Well done,
Thanks,
Sam.
Rachel.
I'm so impressed. Thank you so much for joining us today. I'm sure all our listeners will be very grateful to you.
Thank you, Rachel. So good to chat.